Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Hoops with Noops, brought to you by the fine folks at FTN. I am Alex Noops Christensen, and I'm here to help you through tonight's NBA games. As I mentioned, brought to you by the fine folks at FTN. You can check out all their great stuff. Really good packages, a lot of data, a lot of tools, really good content. Of course, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. And I'll mention it probably a few times today. When you sign up for any FTN package, you get into the FTN Bets Discord. That's where all my picks go, not just my full game picks that I talk about here, but some player props and things that I wait to bet before games. A lot of other stuff from other great bettors as well. The NBA team doing a great job. We've got several people, including myself, well up over 25 plus units for the season so far, and some great conversations, some good bettors in there as part of just the group. A lot of good stuff going on. So as always, please check them out. It helps me, it helps the show, and helps everybody that's, again, part of the FTN team doing a great job helping you try to win. Let's talk a little basketball. Happy Friday. But of course, it is the day after the NBA trade deadline. Some really interesting moves. Again, no stars switching teams, but you look at what the Knicks were able to do. You look at what the Mavericks were able to do. The Knicks bring in Bojan Bogdanovic. They bring in Alec Burks to add to a team that's already pretty deep. And to get those guys, trade only some second-round picks and some backups and players that they weren't really using. Adds a lot of depth to New York, adds a lot more dynamic lineup ability for them. It's going to be really interesting. The Mavericks able to turn Grant Williams, a player that was really not liked in the locker room, was not playing good basketball, into PJ Washington, a young player who could fit with this team for years to come and is a really nice piece in terms of a power forward that can shoot well and play a little defense. It's just a really, really nice move for them. Really excited to see what the Mavericks can do also with Daniel Gafford. Derek Lively Jr., I've mentioned before, is, I think, probably the second most, if not, is definitely the third most, if not possibly the second most important player in Dallas with what he provides in terms of rim protection and pick and roll offense. Gafford not as good as Lively, but a solid player that can help fill in when Lively is not only hurt, but not playing in the game. So they got much better. I really like what they did. My Philadelphia 76ers able to pick up Buddy Hield, who's an expiring contract that doesn't mess up the summer. That means they're still going to have all that money, but pick up another good shooter who can defend, a perfect player to put into that team, somebody they've really, really needed. The Suns able to get Royce O'Neal. That's a nice little pickup for them. Just a real easy way for them to make that team better. So really like some of the moves again, although we did lack a marquee move. So, you think about that stuff. And then the Thunder as well, able to pick up Gordon Hayward. Not sure how much basketball Hayward has left in his career, but at the very least will be a good, strong veteran presence for that Oklahoma City Thunder team and help them hopefully on the court. So we'll see. It's going to be really interesting. We've got 6 games to get to tonight. One I've got to bet in, and of course I'll break down the other 5 once we get to Not for Noops. It's tough. We're in the middle of the regular season. We have a couple weeks until the All-Star break. Be careful. These things can get really messy. So let's go into each game, see what might make sense, what we can do now, and what we can look for and hopefully do later. And we'll start with the biggest spread of the night, one of the biggest spreads of the season. The Boston Celtics host the Washington Wizards. The Celtics are 17-point favorites. The total 236.5. And Boston's great. They deserve to be a huge favorite in this game, but 17 is a really big number for a team in Boston that plays in Miami on Sunday. Now, they have tomorrow off, but that is a look-ahead spot. That gives them some reason to do things like Jason Tatum is questionable tonight with an illness. This would be a great time to rest him with Miami coming in, and I don't think we'll know whether or not that happens till later this afternoon. So a good chance already just to get the best of the number here. If Tatum is announced out, this number will move from 17, I think, down to 14.5. I think, again, some of him being out is already built in here. So it's a tough spot to trust Boston. Again, even though they're a very good team, they match up well, but I just struggle to see how they deserve to be this big of a favorite, given the spot, given the fact that they may be without Tatum. Now, the Washington Wizards, I mentioned Daniel Gafford went to the Mavericks from the Wizards. Washington now with just one player who's 7 feet or taller, a guy named John Bates Jr., who I learned about just hours before recording this today. Played 19 games last year for the Portland Trailblazers. However, has not played yet this year, and not somebody that I expect to see. And I think that the market has come in here and adjusted Washington down, thinking they'll be worse without Gafford. I just think they'll be different. Washington at the end of games has played a lot of small ball, and I think we're just going to see that for the entirety of the 4 quarters that they play. Now, it can be tough. Porzingis tonight against Boston should score a lot, but at every other matchup, at every other position, again, even with Tatum on the floor, Washington should be able to keep this relatively close. And we know that they push hard in the end of fourth quarters, even when they're down by a lot. I think the back door is wide open here. And I only make this Boston, minus 13, minus 13 and a half with Tatum in. So a lot of value here for me on the 17. I can't believe I'm betting the Wizards. I think this is the first or second time, maybe just a couple times this season that I've taken Washington. It's a bad team. They're not trying to win, but they have covered and been a pretty good bet on the road. So I think, again, the market continues to be very high on the Celtics, maybe a little too high, and a noticeable downgrade for Washington after moving a player that just, I think, makes them different, doesn't necessarily make them worse. So give me the Wizards tonight. I really like this spot for them. Let's get to the rest of the games. Again, this is not for Noops. We've got 5 games left. I haven't bet them yet. I might not bet them at all, but let's take a look, and I'll try to help you understand kind of what I'm thinking here. We'll start with the Atlanta Hawks against my Philadelphia 76ers. Oh, the Sixers stink. It's really bad without Joel Embiid. They really have not figured out an identity, and I think a big part of it too is Maxey possibly not 100%. He had been injured a couple weeks ago, and I think is still working back to it. Also missing key secondary pieces in Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, and DeAnthony Melton. So they just need to try to fill out this roster a little bit. I think Hield, once he gets in, it won't be tonight. Probably the next game will help quite a bit. It's just hard for them to figure out what to do. And again, they're missing players beyond the reigning MVP. So we'll see how it goes, but hard to trust the Sixers team. I make the Hawks favored here by about 3 points. So maybe a little bit of value on Atlanta, but just hard to trust this Hawks team. They've really struggled. They'll be without Clint Capella, possibly without DeJounte Murray tonight. It makes it a thin roster and just a messy game here. So it's hard for me, again, to project what the Sixers will be. I don't really trust the Hawks, even though they have finally started covering some numbers. Happy to pass on this game. The Houston Rockets visit the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors 1.5-point favorites, the total 233.5. Pretty much right on my numbers here. I make the Raptors a 1-point favorite with a total of about 231. Toronto made a handful of deals yesterday, and their bench will be a little thin, but they still have their starting lineup of Quickly, Barnes, Gary Trent Jr., Jakob Poeltl, and I think I got everybody there. Oh, I'm sorry, and RJ Barrett, which is a pretty solid starting 5. I think they can compete with this Rockets team that struggled on the road, struggled lately. It's the first night of a back-to-back for both teams. So close to my numbers. It's a messy spot. I do maybe give a little advantage to Toronto, but I don't really want to bet on this game again. The Raptors constantly changing, have not had a set solid lineup for weeks at this point. Houston really in kind of a downturn here. Not the best spot in the world to have to play in Toronto and then go to Atlanta tomorrow. That's a tough travel spot. So no bets for me there. The Milwaukee Bucks continue to struggle. Glenn Rivers apparently was not the answer. The defense hasn't gotten better and the offense has gotten worse. They got shellacked by the Timberwolves last night. A nice win for us, but a tough spot for Milwaukee. They're in a revenge spot here, 14-point favorites over a Hornets team that just has nobody left. They traded away P.J. Washington, traded away Gordon Hayward. LaMelo Ball is out. This team stinks out loud, but I'm not going to lay 14 points with the Bucks team that has struggled all season, especially to cover some big numbers. At the same time, I just don't trust the Hornets here. They're so bad. This game is a mess. So let's move on and talk about another game, which should be a lot of fun, but I'm not quite sure what to expect here. The Denver Nuggets on the second night of a back-to-back go to Sacramento to play the Kings, who are 2.5-point favorites, the total 232.5. Denver, one of the rare teams that in back-to-backs generally focuses on the second night instead of the first. They generally play a little more relaxed style in the first game and then have more energy for the second game and succeed there. But Denver played a tough game against the Lakers last night, won, but pretty much all the starters playing 35-plus minutes, a real change in pattern from what we've seen historically for them. So not quite sure what the effort level is going to be here. I mean, the Kings are a marquee team, and the Nuggets generally play up when going against good teams in their own conference, but not the best spot for Denver here. Curious to see if anybody is questionable once we get an official injury report. The Kings playing good basketball. They're back at home. They're cruising. If Denver gives their best effort, they can win this game. But if they're not focused, this actually could be a good spot to back the Kings. So I'm going to let this one go. I make the Nuggets, honestly, 1.5-point favorites, but just don't know what to expect here. And not a big edge really when you're going across zero. The difference between +1 and -1, it's 2 points, but it's basically nothing. So, it sounds like maybe a little bigger edge than it is. Me saying that I have the Nuggets -1.5 and they're +2.5. It's, again, once you cross that zero, that's not that big of a number. And finally, a game here that, again, should be interesting. Curious to see what the Lakers here do on the second night of a back-to-back, losing to the Nuggets last night. They are 2.5-point underdogs against a Pelicans team that has Zion Williamson questionable. That always makes it kind of tough to figure out what they're going to do. At the same time, LeBron and Anthony Davis are questionable. I expect them to play. It's at home, but again, 35, 36 minutes for each of those guys last night. It's really tough, especially as you get later in the season. So not quite sure who's playing here. If everyone does play, I kind of agree with this line. I'm at Pelicans -3, 3.5. If Zion's out and LeBron and Anthony Davis are in, it's a little closer to a pick 'em for me. So maybe some value on the Lakers, but definitely not a game we can bet now. So those are the 5 games. Again, try to help you understand what I'm thinking, why I'm not betting them yet. Anything I do bet, though, we'll go into that FTN Bets Discord along with any player props I have tonight. I'll add those a little bit later this afternoon. I like to wait till closer to game time so we know who's playing. You miss out on some value there, but there's still a lot of good bets to be made. That prop market is very soft. But the bet to make now in the game of the Washington Wizards going to play the Boston Celtics. The Celtics 17-point favorites. Give me the underdog. I know you got to hold your nose sometimes and eat the stinky cheese when it comes to betting, and no cheese stickier than the Washington Wizards. But 17 is a lot of points, at least 3 or 4 more points than I think it should be. So let's go with Washington tonight. Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up. Leave a comment down there on the bottom. Let me know how I'm doing. Leave any questions you have there. I always check. And if you do have any questions, I get back to you as quick as I can. So thanks again. I'll be back on Monday with a video version as well as a written version of Hoops with Noops. Have a great weekend and best of luck until I see you again.